today in Florida, let me tell you. All right, so I wanted to touch on this, and I know it's going to end up being not chaotically neutral. I have a feeling it's going to be chaotically polarizing. So there goes the title of this channel. Let's talk about hate speech and free speech, and the concept of because you're offended, I have to change. I have to, or because you're offended, I have to change the way that I talk. The concept of free speech, right? It's not created for speech that doesn't offend or doesn't press the boundaries. Free speech is about making it okay to ask questions and push boundaries and to not agree with what the status quo is. That's kind of like, you don't have to protect speech if everybody agrees with it, because everyone's agreeing with it. Like, there's nothing to protect. The reason why free speech is the first amendment to the Constitution is because they wanted to protect the ability to speak out when you see something that's wrong. Speak out and say this is not right. So the concept of hate speech, I believe to be anti-constitutional. You know what? I guess you can go so far as to say, if you're calling for violence, I'll draw the line there with you. If you're calling for violence, if you're saying throw a milkshake at somebody, I'll agree with you. That's not free speech. That's not protected free speech. That is inciting violence. But saying, hey, I don't like oranges, and you're like an orange grower. Sorry, I just don't like oranges. Well, I'm offended by that, and that's going to hurt my business. No, sorry, I can still say that, even though you're offended by it. You actually really don't have the right to not be offended. And that's in this country anyways. If you want to, there are countries where you have the right to not be offended, but unfortunately those places are police states, or they suppress certain minorities, like with jail time and that kind of thing. So I'm sorry, I think that if project yourself onto the space of the person who's not agreeing with the majority for a moment, and you'll recognize, oh wait a minute, no, I still want to be able to say that. Like, if I'm trying to think of a good example, I probably won't be able to come up on the top of my head. But I think more and more this, like, I know that I am doing it even on this channel. I'm self-censoring because I don't want to offend people, and that's probably not great. Once again, I talk about this, the idea of being neutral. There are times that I am opposed to my own neutrality, or I find myself not being neutral, like in spite of myself, like wanting to keep that middle ground and see things from both sides. But then at the same time recognizing that lukewarm is not great. Like sitting in the middle of the road gets you squashed. Like, great. Yoda, I think. No, Mr. Miyagi. I get those two confused. And I think free speech is certainly one of those things. Like, or this concept of hate speech, which I would just strike from the books entirely were up to me. Like, again, up to the point of inciting violence. I'm calling for people to hurt people. I generally don't agree with hurting people, except for in self-defense anyways. If you know me, you recognize that. So yeah, you know what? There are people who are racist, there are people who are bigots, there are people who are homophobic, and in my world, they would be able to speak out in public square, hooting and hollering, pointing fingers and all that stuff. And then the people who are getting hooted and hollered at should be able to just kind of turn their nose and walk away. The general population, I think, looks at those people who are shouting and going, well, you guys are wrong, right? But you have the right to speak however you want to speak, so long as you're not calling for violence. I think that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a case of where, and we've seen this before in the news too, where someone's like right up on the other person's face and yelling. I think that is still protected so long as you're not physically accosting. Once you lay hands, then it becomes an issue. So the counter argument to this is, well, you're a white guy who's middle class income, so what right do you have to say that because nothing really should offend you, you're in the majority everywhere? I suppose you could say that, but then do we forever silence people who are in the majority because the people on the minority side are outnumbered? That would mean if during Democrats, well, that would mean, like, say take Congress, right? You've got a majority Democratic House, right? So does that mean that the Democrats can't speak out because they've got a majority and they can't speak? Obviously, that doesn't work. you have to allow for dialogue. And yeah, you know, there are going to be some people who are poor communicators or just plain jerks. But we have to tolerate jerks to the point that they're not, you know, breaking any laws or accosting anybody. And verbal accosting is, I mean, it goes back to when we were kids, right? Sticks and stones. You gotta let it roll. You know, I suppose it's true. I don't get verbally accosted very often. I did have a guy in the. I went to the library today at lunch, and there was a speaker giving a speech. It was an African American author giving a speech about reparations and slavery. And I didn't know who he was. I just kind of walked by the crowd, and this black dude was walking up the stairs with me. At the same time, I said, "Do you know who that was?" And he said, "No, he's talking about reparations and slavery and stuff." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He goes, something to the effect, I couldn't catch all of it, but he said something to the effect of, "They don't understand, white man ain't gonna give anything back, you just gotta take it." I'm like, yeah, I don't know that you want to just like take my stuff because I'm kind of a decent dude. Please, you know, I don't think that's the correct answer either. I think, again, I happen to recognize, or I happen to have a strong belief anyways, that there was a coordinated effort to separate, to make black culture more destructive, to you know, break up the families, and like they were the first. It was first coordinated against black communities to break up their families. I mean, like by real bad guys, bankers and rich folks, who said, "Listen, if we can get the black folks to fight against the poor white folks, they'll just fight with each other, and they won't pay attention to what we're doing up here with all the money in the banks and things." So, and there's audio tape I've heard of, like record executives telling rap artists, "Make your rap videos violent. Like, let's push the guns and push the violence, and that's going to be great." And you know, some guys do anything for a buck, white, black, no matter what. And they allowed for it. So I think that's what a lot of what Tupac was talking out about. It's like, listen, the music business is trying to turn our culture into something that it's not supposed to be, and ultimately harming us in the long run. So where was I going with all that? I probably had a really good point there, but driving and doing these videos, sometimes I have to pay attention to the road a little bit, right? I guess the point is, I don't buy the separation of people based on certainly not on skin color or even culture. I think that the real separation, and it's an intentional separation, is to keep the poor fighting with the middle class fighting with other middle class, poor fighting with other poor, and nobody paying attention to the guys at the very, very top with all the money and the banks and those kinds of things. I think it's getting closer to a boiling point. It's going to come to an end. We're eventually turning up there and looking at the corrupt politicians and the corrupt banks and things. And I had said a couple of days ago, if peace breaks out with Iran, and again I'll do another video on that in a second, you'd be hard pressed to get me to not want to vote for him. But I would add to that, if he shuts down or nationalizes the Federal Reserve, once again another one of my keystone issues, our money system. If he can actually correct our money system, put it either on a gold standard or something to do with cryptos, again, he would have done something that no other president could have even attempted without getting shot in the head. Kind of a good thing. All right, I'm ranting. I am. I'm sure there's a cohesive thread in here, and that basically is treat each other well. Be okay with someone saying something that you're offended by, because that's their right. Don't incite violence, and certainly don't get physical with anybody unless it's in self-defense. All right, let me see if I can get another video done before I get home. Cheers.